The Clever Fox and the Grapes. Part 1. Introduction and Setting. In the middle of a green forest full of tall trees and soft grass, there lived a clever fox. This fox was known for being very smart. He had lived in the forest for many years, and all the animals knew that the fox always found a way to solve his problems, no matter how hard they were. But today, the fox had a problem that wasn't just about being smart, it was about being very hungry. The sun shined through the leaves, making golden spots on the ground. The air smelled of flowers and fresh earth, but the fox noticed another smell, something sweet and tasty. As the fox walked through the forest, he suddenly stopped and lifted his nose into the air. He smelled something delicious. His stomach growled loudly. The smell was coming from a bunch of grapes hanging high on a tree branch. The grapes looked like small purple jewels, shining in the sunlight. They were ripe and full of juice, almost dripping from the bunch. Part 2. Discovering the Grapes. The fox walked slowly towards the tree, his eyes fixed on the grapes. They were hanging on a thin branch, far out of his reach. The fox sat down on the ground for a moment, looking up and thinking about how to get the grapes. He was very hungry, and all he could think about was eating those juicy grapes. There must be a way to reach them, the fox said quietly to himself, trying to come up with a clever idea. He started jumping, trying to reach the grapes. He jumped again and again, but every time he failed to grab them. The grapes were just too high. Part 3. The Fox's Struggle. The fox didn't give up. He tried to climb the tree, but he wasn't good at climbing. His paws slipped on the smooth bark. Then he looked around for something to help him reach the grapes. He found some big stones and tried to stack them up to make a little staircase, but when he stood on them, the stones rolled away and he fell down. The fox began to feel frustrated. The more he tried and failed, the angrier he became. He knew the grapes were there, shining in the sunlight, so close but so far. With each failure, he felt more and more disappointed. Part 4. Meeting other animals. Just then, a small lizard passed by the tree and stopped to watch the fox from a distance. "What are you doing, fox?" asked the lizard curiously. The fox, without looking at the lizard, replied, "I'm trying to get those grapes, but they're too high." The lizard laughed and said, "Maybe they're not meant for foxes." "Foxes aren't known for climbing trees." The fox ignored the lizard and kept trying. After a while, a rabbit and then a squirrel came by. They stopped to watch the fox's failed attempts to reach the grapes. The animals laughed at the fox, who was getting more and more frustrated. The squirrel said, "Why don't you try something else? Maybe you should find an easier meal." But the fox didn't want to listen. He had his mind set on those grapes, and he felt that if he gave up now, he would lose more than just a meal. His pride was at stake. Part 5. The Turning Point. As the sun began to set and darkness started to cover the forest, the fox sat down under the tree, tired and disappointed. He thought about all the times he tried and failed, and all the time he had wasted. Then he remembered a similar experience from the past, where he was in a difficult situation but managed to solve it by thinking quickly. "Maybe I need to think differently," the fox said to himself. He took a deep breath and started considering all his options. Suddenly, he had a bold idea. What if he used the branches from the nearby tree as a bridge to reach the grapes? Quickly, the fox began to put his plan into action. He jumped onto the nearby tree and climbed up to a branch that was close to the grapes. The branch was thin, and the fox knew it might not hold his weight, but he had no other choice. Part 6. The Conclusion and Lesson Learned. Finally, the fox reached the thin branch and prepared to jump towards the grapes. But when he tried, the branch broke and the fox fell to the ground hard. He got up slowly, feeling sore and frustrated. He looked at the grapes one last time and finally decided to give up. "Those grapes are probably sour anyway," the fox said to himself as he walked away. He felt disappointed, but he learned an important lesson. Not everything can be achieved easily, and sometimes it's better to walk away before you lose more than you can afford. The fox returned home, still hungry, but with his pride intact. He had learned that being clever isn't always enough to achieve your goals, and that sometimes it's okay to accept defeat and move on. Deep down, he knew that another opportunity would come, and he would be ready for it.